All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started and call this meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for being here at yet another fabulous Finance and Operations Committee meeting. I'd also like to especially welcome Ms. Downer, who is joining us joining us on the committee now. So welcome.
Thank you.
And before we get started, we do have an agenda addition. And so I'm going to move that we add to the agenda a motion to add an executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 1206D and E for discussion of the selection of a site or the lease for adult education, and 1-210B10 for discussion which would result in the disclosure of attorney-client privilege communications.
Second.
It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, so that passes, and we will add that towards the end of the meeting, at the end of the agenda. And now we'll jump right into the action items. The first are there any comments or questions regarding any of the information on the items? Hearing and seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into the abstracts. 3.1 is the ARPA Para Educational Professional Development Grant. And I think it was said Ms. Red-Hannons was going to cover this.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So this is our ARPA Paraprofessional Professional Learning Grant. We're required by state law to provide professional learning hours and service to our paraprofessionals. This grant allows us the opportunity to provide them professional learning with utilizing our core reading program in grades K through 5. As you know, we have paras that work pull small groups in our kindergarten and first grade classes. So this would provide them with targeted professional learning that will meet their needs and help them as they're working with our students in grades kindergarten and first grade. So we're really excited about this opportunity.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions? I just had one quick question, and that is this something that people would apply for, or are there people already?
No,
like,
we're going to dedicate time to provide the paras with this professional learning.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Hearing and seeing no one else on this one, we'll move into the agreements. The first one is 4.1, an agreement with Highville Charter School. Ms. Jackson?
Yep. So this is an agreement with Highville. I know in the last episode, talked a little bit about the charter schools and agreements in general. Highville, at this point in time, we've come to an agreement of what the final amount would be for this school year. So you'll see that we landed on an additional $60,000 based on some of their student enrollment. And just as you know, same with Booker T for the upcoming school year, it is our goal and plan not to have a contract, but to have full-time employees sent over to Highville. And we're still, just as a footnote, we're still waiting for 2 other charter schools to come to an agreement.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions? All right. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much, and talk about 4.2, which is year 4 of a multi-year agreement with Connecticut Association of Performing Arts. So this is listed as Dr. White.
Yes. This is the contract with the Schubert Theater that supports the programming at Co-op and the use of facilities between the 2 spaces. This has been an ongoing contract that used to help with the management of the spaces at including the black box space and the main stage in Co-op, as well as one other programming.
All right, thank you. And we'll just note this is year 4 of year 5 of a 5-year multi-year. Any comments or questions? All right. I had none either, so we will move on to the one amendment, which is an amendment with All Point Home Care LLC. Ms. Jackson?
So this is we had to do an amendment to the contract. We have the service for our kiddos who require nursing services by their IEP. However, the initial persons who were LPNs, now we had to replace with an RN, and that's where you see the actual increase in the dollar amount. They had to replace the LPN with an RN.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? All right, I had none either, so we'll move into purchase orders. The first is 6.1 purchase order under the TIPS contract with Aptigee. Mr. Harmon?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Members of the board will remember that Viviana Camacho did a presentation at a recent meeting of the full board to describe the process and rationale for selecting a new vendor to provide to support two-way communication, particularly with families. Aptigee is a platform that we did a fair amount of research about and benchmarking with other school districts. We heard pretty extensively from members of the schools community, students, teachers, families, and we believe that it will serve the strategic goal which we set out to accomplish, which is to strengthen two-way communication with families. It has a particular strength with concurrent translation, so that families who may speak a language other than English can communicate in real time with personnel at school who may not be native speakers in whatever that language is. The other virtues are that it's well integrated. The two-way communication function is well integrated with the web management system and with alerts that would go out in case of emergency. And it's effectively cost neutral. So we're taking funds that are currently going to provide district communications out to families and also web services, and we're repurposing those funds with, we think, what will be a far more effective result. And so we're eager to get the contract signed and to move ahead with implementation.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions from the committee? Dr. Yarbrough?
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Harmon, for the presentation and also referencing the presentation to the board. This looks like a one-year contract. What's your understanding of what the cost would be in future years? And also, has the district thought about a multi-year contract with the vendor?
We started out with a single year renewable contract. Our understanding is that the cost would could escalate over time, but that we would make every effort to maintain costs that are within our budget capacity, which don't expand very quickly or at all.
Okay, thank you. And the vendor hasn't necessarily indicated whether or not they have like a set standard increase cost.
I don't believe they do, but I could double check that for you. I'm not sure of the answer.
Okay. I know there are benefits to a multi-year contract, and I recognize maybe it could be to our benefit by just having a one-year contract to let the vendor know they really need to, perform well for us, for the board to agree to continue working with them. But thank you for the information, just to give me some insight.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Downer?
So, actually, I just have a quick question on a startup. I too am in agreement with the multi-year. You save more money, it's more cost effective. But this startup is, that's actually, so that's the risk too, President Yarborough too. So if we go, we have the startup costs. That's gonna actually, if we don't go with Apogee the next year, then I too will be looking at, we're gonna have to pay startup for another company if we don't go with them. So is that possible to go back to them and ask them for the multi-year before we even get, just to let them know they're still going to be evaluated, but if we were to pursue it, can we get that early on? Because a lot of times when you get early costs, they'll have some sort of significant savings.
I'm happy to go back to them and ask that question. I'm sorry, I just don't know the answer, but I will find out.
And is it possible to go back to the other referrals, the recommendations, to see if those school systems are doing it on a multi-year?
Yes, certainly. Yes, happy to do that.
Now that's just a simple question. Did you pursue it on a multi-year? Are you currently doing it now?
Okay,
All right, thanks.
I'll get on that. Thank you.
All right, yeah, thank you very much. I agree that multi-years tend to be helpful in terms of reducing the annual cost increases. I deal a lot with those in my work here at the university. That said, this is a pretty uncertain year for me at the university too, and we're moving away from multi-years just simply because we don't have a lot of good indication as to where things are going to be in a year. But I certainly support seeing if a multi-year is available and if it can happen this week. Please advise if the district wants to go with a multi-year versus a single year.
Thank you.
And
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, just to add one little point to the conversation to what Ms. Downer mentioned and what you mentioned. Now, my expectation might be, unless the companies writes it out differently, that the future costs may be different. Because I think in this one I read that it includes maybe migration services and et cetera. So that's part of the startup costs that wouldn't be needed in year two, or startup services that wouldn't be needed in year two. So I know that there are different ways that they can write it where it ends up being the same cost, but yeah, that's just an initial thought that it could come in lower.
My understanding is that the startup costs were wrapped into it's listed on your agenda under the information only transactions. There's a startup contract with Apogee for $29,000.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Yes. So that's that's where those startup costs are. And they were isolated out in terms of this contract. And I will say that based on data we were getting from the other vendor that was under serious consideration, that was a relatively low startup fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I can certainly, I'll follow up on the multi-year question for sure.
Thank you.
I was going to add as a point of clarification, item 2.1 was the startup costs in this fiscal year. And the item that we're discussing now is for the costs from July 1 to June 30 of next fiscal year.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, hearing nothing else on this, we'll move on to purchase orders. 6.2 and 6.3 are related, both with ABM. And just as background, these were tabled by the full board at our last board meeting so that there could be a chance for board members to seek more clarification. So who will be speaking on this item? Ms. Bourne?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. We have been, as you know, last year we had an additional request of $500,000 for SJ services. In doing a review of their billing, we found some areas where we were able to reduce the invoices this year. There's been a lot of back and forth with them as we're trying to validate how many people are on each night and how absences are covered and how we validate who's here and who's not. So we've been negotiating with them pretty frequently and have gotten some reduced bills. In the midst of that, they refused to do the extra permitted work, and ABM was gracious enough to pick up that work for us. So these invoices are for the time period when SJ was not doing the permitted work. The first one is for FLAC. The second one is for the other areas where there was permitted work. So we have been realizing a savings this year, even with these costs. So does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Ms. Downer, I think you had your hand up.
I do. I have a lot of questions. SJ Services requested 500K last year. What was those services for?
They were for mostly permitted work.
So that's the same permanent work here, like FLAC and Hill House, any after school activity, any
Yes,
sports activity.
yes.
So they requested 500K from our last budget. And now they're refusing to do work. Did SJ Services do any work at all?
They did permitted
Or-
work up to November.
Mhm.
We have been negotiating with them. So the July, they billed us for 508,000. We were able to negotiate that down to 463,000. We're still in communication with them about these discrepancies, if you want to call them, where our custodial director has been going through the timesheets and coming up with different numbers of people, and we've been going back and forth with them. Because of the back and forth and because we shorted them, they stopped the services for the permitted work. And that was about November. Originally, it was just to December 9th, and then it got extended and extended even more. I think at this point, they're going to pick up the permitted work again. But if you look at the invoices that have been paid, they are significantly less than they were last year. Outside of the permitted work. So we're having an issue both with the regular work and justifying the number of staff that are on site every day, and then the permitted work.
So is it just a question? The absentees were there, but they expect us to pay for them being absent and they're not employees? Is that?
There's been conversation back and forth on that. Neither side has a definitive answer, but for the amount that we have reduced them. So Mike Carter has been meeting with their supervisor, trying to get a better process in place to determine the ins and outs of everybody.
Okay, so basically SJ Services is not considered an employee of New Haven Public School System.
Correct, they're a vendor.
So they're a vendor. Do we normally pay for sick time for a vendor?
No, they put in replacements. When somebody's out sick, they'll put in somebody else. So they're manning the work and putting in the number of people that they can put up every day. But we've had some questions that we've not been satisfied with the answers, so they're still negotiating back and forth.
Okay. The other question I have is this covered in a contract to SJ Services that they are to cover the permitted events at FLAC and Hill House and Cross?
The contract allows for additional payments for permitted events.
Who is covering now for the events?
I think SJ Service is back on staff.
How is the school determining who shows up and who doesn't?
So in some cases, they're doing spot checking just to make sure, but they have a system, a tracking system, that when the staff comes on property, they're tracked in and out.
How?
That's a question that I think Mike Carter would have to answer. I just know that it's a online tracking system that when it reads when they're on property or within a certain amount of distance from the property.
So they're attached to a digital badge system?
I'm not sure the term. I
Can
apologize.
Can someone answer that from the school system, please?
Jamar, you can answer that question if you know it.
Mr. Lean?
Yes, I can answer the operational questions. SJ Services, after we had pressured them to find some sort of clocking system, which they did not have, which was required by the contract, which is what brought up some of these issues over the summertime. They purchased a geofencing style clocking system. So the employees, the SJ Services employees, when they show up to the building they're assigned to, they clock in via an app, and the app checks their location through a geofencing type of location service as part of that application. So that is what they're using right now for their employees to clock in to ensure that they're showing up at work or showing up at the assigned location.
Okay, so the question now is from November back, were they using the geo-style clocking system?
I believe that system was put into place somewhere around, I believe, Christine, maybe September or August.
Late August, early September, yes.
After we brought it to their attention that we are requiring them to do so.
So the point I'm making here is these SJ Services has been on our school grounds for many years. And this has been in the contract that they were supposed to provide a clocking system.
That is correct. So what I want to just make sure is understood is that prior to June of 2025, the validation and verification and authorization of those invoices was not being handled by the facilities department. That was being handled directly by the operating office, right? The chief operating office. So discussions prior to that time, no one on this call is going to have an answer for that because that person is not here, right? So when it was given to facilities in June to review it, that is when we started questioning the hours and started questioning their clocking system, because we were not going to authorize their invoices without being able to validate the hours. And that's where all of this started, where we started questioning how they were validating their hours. And so that's the reason why Christine and Michael Carter have been going back and forth with them, requesting some credits because they haven't been able to validate certain hours. So I hope that kind of clears up that part of it.
It does not. How long have they been on our campuses for the last, 3 years, 5 years? 3 years?
Would have to look up their, they've been here since I've been here, so 3 years is at least 3 years.
Right. So what's happened in 3 years? So we have a contracted service that we are paying people full price, and they're not giving us full work or quality. So they haven't even been on our campus. How do we know that we've not paid them for something that they didn't deserve? So because someone's not there, that doesn't make it go away.
Exactly. So when new management came in and we were getting these invoices, and specifically when this $500,000 came up, Mr. Carter and I went through with the custodial director with the past timesheets. There were written timesheets, stacks and stacks of timesheets, and realized that this was a paper system and not the electronic system that we had required. So then a review started, and Mr. Aline and others on his team got involved, and we have been meeting with them and questioning every month the invoices. And they, I think we have netted a good result this year. But in doing that pushback and not just paying the invoice that was presented, they refused to do the permitted hours. And so putting us at a disadvantage, especially at FLAC, if they were not going to show up to do those permitted hours. So that's what brought this opportunity with ABM, who's familiar with the buildings, to take on that service for us. So there was no lacking service. And as Jamar said, I can't even speak to what happened prior because the invoices were vetted and signed off on by the facilities COO office and presented for payment. It wasn't until a new person came in that was questioning the process that we got into this back and forth with them.
Okay, I almost I almost think that this is two separate incidents, whereas you have a situation where it needs to be investigated from the day that SJ Services came on our property, contracted with us, and there was really, they didn't hold up their end to the bargain. And they're asking for money that we can't account for, whether they were on the campus or not. ABM came in and stepped in, and we're actually maybe probably paying a higher rate for ABM than we are to pay the hourly rate that we're supposed to pay, whether it's $19 an hour for SJ Services. So I think this needs to be investigated. This is definitely a situation where you have them not holding up, and I don't know how much you could even how ethical it is to tell. I mean, we contract with them. It seems like they're in control of us. They can tell us what they're not doing and what they are doing. We're holding up our end on the bargain, and they're not holding up theirs. And to a flat refusal and cost us this extra money, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable even leaving it here. I think it needs to go to legal.
And I can just share before Ophelia wants to jump in, I can share that the RFP closes tomorrow, that we did put it out this year, and the process closes tomorrow.
So we also took a look at migrating how we can get out of the privatization. It's not working.
If I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if we could, for this, we're moving into this being all about SJ Services, and the item on the agenda is
Mr. Wilcox. Mr. Wilcox.
Excuse me.
Order. I'm calling it right now. Order. I'm asking that this actually gets tabled. It needs to go to legal.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable voting on something like this.
Ms. Downer?
Yep.
I'm chairing this meeting.
Okay.
I'm going to say, as per Robert's Rules of Order, we need to stay on the items on the agenda. I fully support adding a discussion item to the next meeting to talk more about SJ Services and all the work that's being done to investigate this. I fully support that. I want that to happen. I'm asking us now, are there anything related to these two agenda items for these purchase orders, 6.2 and 6.3? And if we could move the discussion back to that. But I fully support the work that staff is doing to dig into this. I fully support a full report being made at our next meeting.
And we can verify that ABM did the work.
Yes.
It's verified.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Is there anything else that we may owe ABM from the time of after March 22nd, 2025?
Take a look at the two invoices. I don't think so. I think these invoices cover the final piece of the part-time custodial services.
Okay, so the other question I have too, because ABM has covered here, is SJ Services going to be seeking any extra funds from us from the time period of December 1st to March 21st? Like, they're going to absolutely say that they did not work this.
They have billed us for minor services during that time frame. So they are the ones that said that they would not do the work. So no, they will not be billing us.
Okay, so from December 1st, 2024, let me just, you said they billed you for minor.
Yep.
So from December 21st to 2024 to March 21st, 2025, SJ Services didn't do any support services or floor support during that time.
They submitted invoices for $12,120 for some extra work. I would have to look to see if that's permitted or overtime.
Mm. So mm. So they submitted the 12,000 just for this contract, or because I know there's two here. So since they're together, so SJ Services is saying that one is for Flack and one is for Hill House and Cross and Career. So which one did they submit? Because ABM is saying they did the work. So which one? Was it for Flack or was it for Hill House, Cross, and Career?
They're not duplicate services.
Okay, which one? Which support services where?
I would have to look up the actual invoices.
Okay, because that's important. That's extremely important for this one now. Because if ABM is saying that they did the work, ABM is saying they did the work for SJ Services. SJ Services is submitting a bill the same time period for $12,000. So that's important here.
I'm looking at the November one is the November prior to when ABM started. So that $9,200 is not part of what the other is $2,833.
So I'm asking for the dates. What are the dates?
I'll get that back to you. I don't have the invoices in front of me. I'd have to look them up.
Okay, I'm also questioning why are we not receiving 30-day bills from ABM so we can go back and look and check? I thought we were going to move away from that, Mr. Wilcox. Am I wrong?
I'm sorry. Can you clarify what you mean by 30-day
I thought
bills?
we were going to move away from multiplying bills together so we'd be able to see what we're actually spending. I don't want to bring up other stuff, but there's been extensive talk about early warning. This is not an early warning to give us an early warning.
So as a point of clarification, early warning, we've been discussing issues with SJ Services for a few months now. Michael Carter's been bringing us up to date on that. So I think this committee's had some early warning on some of this. But again, I'm not understanding what you mean by 30-day things for ABM. Are there any other questions regarding 6.2 and 6.3?
There is. Okay. Why is ABM allowed to give us almost a 3-month bill? Why? Why is that?
As was reported in our previous meeting by Mr. Carter, it was because they were at the time they were in the bind of having SJ Services refusing to provide the services and negotiating and working with them, and at the same time having scheduled events at FLAC and these other locations that were going to happen. And so that is why it progressed the way it did, because the hope of the district, as reported by Mr. Carter last meeting, was that SJ would do this work and that they would no longer need to have ABM doing the work. So he's testified to that on multiple occasions. And if I'm getting something wrong, Dr. Yarborough, please feel free to correct me.
We talked about early warning with the board and getting an early warning. That has nothing to do with them submitting an early warning bill, because then we would have known we had a problem sometime in January with SJ Services. We know this 3 months later that we have a problem with SJ Services. I don't think that's fair to the board. I don't think that's fair to not have that early warning signal that, hey, we have a problem. Someone's not upholding their end on the bargain. And normally when you do services, you get a 30-day bill. Have 45 days per law to pay it. That's the law. Okay. So I don't know where this is coming from, but I do know that we talked about early warning signals. And sending a bill 3 months later is not early warning. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, and I don't know if Mr. Lean has a response to the bill part. Mr. Lean?
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. So just to provide some clarification, Ms. Downer, the hours were submitted at the end of every single month. That's how we came up with the numbers. It has not been invoiced yet because we don't have a purchase order to apply it to. So we have submitted on a monthly basis the hours for these events. This has not been rolled up by ABM to send in all at one time. We are the submission to the board has been done as part of the time frame that they chose to submit it and how they chose to submit it. But I just want to make sure there was a point of clarification there that the hours are submitted to the business office on a monthly basis.
Thank you, Mr. Lean. Ms. Bourne and Mr. Lean, you might have answered this, but just in terms of, do we have an estimated cost from now until the end of the fiscal year as it relates to FLAC event labor and the permitted event labor?
So Dr. Yarborough, what can be done is based on the events that are currently permitted and approved. We can come up with an estimated number, but that does not mean it captures everything because permits come up after the fact, right? FLAC has events that come up after the fact that are told to us. And so we respond by making sure that they're staffed, whether it be ABM or SJ Services. Now we're doing SJ Services again because they're now back to providing the service. We can come up with an estimate if you would like for the next F&O committee. Obviously, I'm not prepared for that today. I can have the assistant director of custodial services come up with those hours based on the number of staff that would be needed for the events that are permitted. And we can come up with an estimation for that for what is currently permitted. But it doesn't mean that there won't be other permits that will come up after the fact.
Yes,
so it wouldn't be 100% accurate is what I want to say.
Yes, that's fine. I think having an estimate of expected costs that might be at a certain level or above would be helpful in knowing what's coming. Now, is it the case that have we contracted that that SJ Services have to provide this and the board just goes to ABM if SJ Services is not available? And we don't have to answer this now, but I think we should look into the district making a decision of who's going to provide the services for the FLAC event labor and permitted event labor from here until now, to the end of the fiscal year.
As Christine Bourne had alluded to, it is part of their contract, and so now that they are going to provide that service, it will be SJ Services. ABM was just asked to step in during this kind of urgent time where they didn't have the staffing. They gave us basically a 3-day notice that they're going to stop doing services, and so we were asked if we could provide and help provide the support services, and so we gladly said, sure, we're a partner of the district. We'll be happy to help out. And so that's what these are for. This is just for us coming in and stepping in until someone says, okay, SJ Services is coming back. We no longer need ABM to provide the services. And so, we were just happy to help during that period.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilcox, it might be useful for Attorney Lexiadis or someone else to look at breach of contract and just what kind of legal teeth the district has in terms of how we navigate a vendor saying they're going to do something, then refusing to do something, and then coming back again to say they're going to do something. Because if we can have some predictability in terms of our services that we're committing to for renting out the spaces, and then also the bill. Let's say ABM is unavailable, then we're going to be stuck if we are not planning. So I don't know who would do that. And maybe it's the superintendent's call, I'm not sure. But just looking into how people fulfill contracts and don't fulfill contracts might be useful to the committee and to the board.
Yes, I'm certainly supportive of the district using anything at its disposal to make sure we're not paying and that we're holding people to the contracts they sign. If I remember correctly from Mr. Carter's previous testimony, there was some issues that this wasn't spelled out in great detail in the RFP and the contract, but that was going to be rectified on the one that is out now because this went back out to be bid on. So we'll have the benefit of a better contract moving forward with whoever wins the work. So I certainly support that.
And meanwhile, I support the district paying ABM for the services that we ask them to render.
All right.
When it comes to voting.
If I may ask Ms. Bourne, you had mentioned that you were going to be looking at the invoices, if you would, before Thursday, and get back to the committee with confirmation that none of the work that is listed on these two purchase orders is also being paid to SJ. It sounded like there was a $2,700 invoice that you were going to look at that was in the state range, and you were going to confirm that that was not for this work. You had already said that the district wouldn't be paying them for it, but if we could just confirm, that would be good. Ms. Downer, you have your hand up?
Yes, I was definitely President Yarborough, you are right. If indeed that they are supposed to be here, we need something more than later from legal, just to reassure what we have, so we could actually make sure we have support in the services that we need. And I think legal, or like you said, something from the Dr. Negron's office or something, just to assure that we're going to have the coverage. I also think that it would be helpful for the board to know about the other charges that could be possibly invoiced, and making sure so there's no questions that come up that they think that SJ Services was on the campus working to get the $12,000 or whatever. So I think there needs to be something there too also. But this is indeed sounds like a breach of contract, but I don't know, who knows what the contract says and didn't say. And that's it.
All right. And as I have said before, I'm quite happy, and we can add it to our discussion calendar to get an update on the SJ Services situation at our next meeting. And if there's problems or questions with that, I'm sure the superintendent will get in touch with us. All right. Hearing nothing else on this item, we'll move on to 7.1, which is an award of with All American Waste. And this is Mr. Erline.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. This is a contract, an on-call contract for our dumpsters, to be able to haul away our dumpsters and bring them back with All American Waste. It's a contract that's going to start July 1st of 2025, so it's for the new fiscal year. And just bear with me as I adjust my screen so I can see this and give you the correct numbers. For $45,000, or not to exceed $45,000 for the entire fiscal year, FY 25-26. Pending your questions.
Any comments or questions? Hearing, seeing none. Thank you. We'll move on to 7.2, which is award a contract with Utility Communications. Chief Reddish.
Hi, this contract is for the maintaining of our security equipment as far as cameras, which is S2, Milestone, and the locking systems. It's not for adding cameras, it's just for our maintenance. As cameras start to go down or the electronic devices start to fail, our key swipes, Utility Communications comes in and makes those repairs.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? All right, hearing none. That is Ms. Downer.
So, Chief Reddish, I just got a quick question. I read somewhere that it was the final renewal option. Is this contract going to go up next year if we choose to use them?
I don't know. It depends on how much the prices of items are going to go up, especially after the tariffs. So I wouldn't be able to tell you that.
It would be going back out to bid.
Yeah, it would have to go back out to bid again.
Okay, all right, because I
Yes.
was questioning that, and I know that the electronics is one of the ones that's on the tariff list. Okay, all right, no problem.
All right.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. So that's the end of our.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Yeah, just a suggestion, Chief Reddish. Maybe we can get one of the new manufacturing facilities to make our cameras and get the technology center, if we can get the students to work, we might be able to reduce costs and get some in-house services for security.
You know, it would be a great idea. I took some manufacturing in high school myself, so we used to maintain a lot of the stuff in school ourselves.
All right.
All right.
I'll just say, having just seen, along with Ms. Downer and others, the new manufacturing facility at Hill House, they could probably make anything there. So
I don't know if it will be government approved though, with the cameras.
baby steps, we'll get there.
All right.
All right. Well, hearing nothing else on this is the end of our action items. I'm going to make the motion, and I move we send to the full board these one abstract, these two agreements, one amendment, 3 purchase orders, and 2 contracts.
I second.
Been seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Wilcox?
Yeah.
Yes. Just that also with this, we get the information that we requested in terms of the SGA potential overlap.
Agreed.
That's all.
Right. And I believe Ms. Bourne said that she'd be able to do that by Thursday, so we would have that information before the meeting. All right. Hearing no other discussion, President Yarborough?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, so that motion carries. We will move into our discussion items. First is listed as a 25-26 budget update. Don't know if there's an update on this, just where we are in the process and so on. It's listed as Ms. Hannons, but I don't see Ms. Hannons. Oh, there we go.
Here.
She's here. She's going to get us started, and then I'm going to finish off.
Thank you.
Okay. So what I'm going to do tonight is to basically go over the items, which are basically the numbers and some of the sheets that we talked about. I'm not going to go over the entire presentation again because we did this already at the community forum, which was virtual, and then we also did a first presentation at the finance, our F&O. So to save some time, I'm just going to get right into the meat of the presentation. So if we could go to page so if we can go, Christine, to page we don't need this one right now. So we're going to go right to page 17. So what it is here is that we have our proposed budget for 25-26, and our first presentation was that we did three budgets really. We did one that had all of the staff and vacancies, and then we did one that has just if we would just say, okay, fine, just cut out all vacancies, what we would need, and then we had a slide that shows you side by side what those numbers look like. So if you look at this budget here, the 25-26, this is the budget with all the actual costs and the variances. And so we were asking for the 23-231-181, which was the 11.15% increase. Now, if you go to the next page, why are page numbers different? If we go to the next page, oh, I know why, Christine, because we took slides up. Okay, so if we go to the, it would be 17 on yours. Oh, 18, okay. We're sorry, we're just providing you with the slides minus the other ones. So here we had this is the budget where we had the 23, and the first one we asked for, okay, said fine, if we had nothing else in the budget, we were in no vacancies, and we were going status quo with nothing new, then the difference would still be 16.9. So that would be an 8.14% increase. And then again, as I spoke earlier, if we included all vacancies that we currently have, then we would be asking for an 11.15% increase. So to show you what those increases look like, keep going. The first one here is the 8% increase, and you could see here that the increase from 24-25, and this was staff actual costs with nothing else in there, no vacancy, status quo, and this shows you where we would be at a budget amount of 225, coming from 208 to 225. The next budget, keep going because it's the same one again. Okay, and then the first one I had said earlier, they're backwards, but that's okay. We were going from 208, 263 is what the city gave us, with a cost with all actual costs and vacancies in there. You would see we would be asking for 231, which is the 23 number that's been floating around, and that would be an 11.15% increase. And that's the 8.4.
These are the side by side, the 8.4 and the 11.15.
Oh, okay, I see it. Okay, I've seen these slides as numbers so many times. I think I'm going blind here. Okay, so this showing it side by side, you can see where we had the two scenarios and how they differed. One with vacancies, one without vacancies. And as I explained, as we've tried to explain with every financial report that we do, the approved budget, the 208, 263, 784, that is the budget that we put on the system, keeping in mind that, say, if you really needed 210, well, on our financial system, you cannot go even $1 over if you don't have the money. So this is our budgeted amount for this year, 208, 263, 784. So I want to make that clear because sometimes people will say, well, you're not showing an increase. Well, sometimes you can't show the increase. If you only had $10, you can only put $10 on the financial system. So what we try to do is we try to equally obligate the money across the board, first hitting personnel as much as we can, and then we go into the other categories based on historical data. But of course, if you're not getting a full budget, you can only put on the system what you have. So then in that case, you have to back into a number. And while I'm talking about that, our maintenance and custodial services is a good example where we always say that we're not fully budgeted. So you'll see where they'll put in enough just to get their obligations started, and then they may have to come back in with a change order because, like, say if you only had $100,000 and they had $300,000 worth of supplies and materials that they need, well, they know they can't get them all because, as I explained earlier, if you only get 208, 263, that's all you can budget. You can't budget anything else that's coming from another place or like say your needs. If your need is one number, but at the end of the day, when we get our allocation, that's all you can put on our financial system. And that's when we have to do a lot of work behind the scenes to try look at these reports every month to see, well, okay, fine. Did we spend $3 million in supplies? Well, can we now reduce that? Because we're only going to spend X amount of dollars, and then we will do a revision later in the year. But keeping in mind that the local general funds is only $208 million. So this sheet here shows you if we go in with the 16, it's 8.1% increase. And if we go with the all vacancies, which we're trying to show you what our real needs are, then we're going in at 11% increase. Okay, and our notable cost drivers, and we need to see this. Our notable cost drivers are the 84.3% of the general fund are all personnel costs. So when you look at trying to cut the budget, you look at, well, what are we going to cut? Because the bulk of our funds are in our personnel lines. And then another cost driver is our out-of-district tuition. And then another large cost driver is transportation. Essentially, all part-time staff are part of collective bargaining agreements. So we have to go with the salaries that are part of their bargaining agreement. And the underneath there just shows you our largest bargaining agreements and what the percentage rates are, keeping in mind that we're still negotiating with one bargaining unit. Any other salary changes all have to be negotiated. So what our transportation contract renewal, I guess they were telling me that the anticipated increase is 2%. And then we have other price escalation. They're spelled out in our long-term agreements and contracts, which are our building maintenance and tuition, which are contracts that once they are negotiated, you can't go back during the year and try to renegotiate those contracts. And I guess a typical example would be where if you have the bus transportation is good, once you go in and say, this is what I'm negotiating and these are the buses that I need, we then can say in that fiscal year, we can maybe look in future years, but we then can't go back and say, okay, fine. I think I want to change all my routes now, and I'm not going to have 80 buses. I only want 60, keeping in mind that they negotiated in good faith. And so we have to catch any, things that we would like to see in contracts. We should rather look at those while we're negotiating those contracts. And then also we're experiencing escalating special education costs, which are just, they're uncontrollable costs because of the fact that everything goes out, nothing comes in. So we have very little coming in. And so that our special education costs, are just escalating to the point where those numbers are just increasing every time we look. There's another charge. And again, those charges are really uncontrollable because if a kid comes in today, or if there's a homeless kid that comes in, we have to service that kid. And then our state regulation increases for our charter schools. Those costs are basically costs that we have no control over as well. While we would like to, we don't have the control over. So those increasing costs are considered a notable cost driver as well. Okay, we're missing something. Okay, I want to give Dr. Negron the opportunity to talk about the what we've been working on just about every night and day, trying to work on this 25-26 budget, where we're trying to go, the work that we've done thus far. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Negron.
Thank you, Ms. Hennons. Chairman Wilcox, Dr. Yarborough, and Ms. Downer, you've heard all those numbers, but I want to make sure that I put this in the most simplest term. The reality is we have looked at everything, every possibility. And I want to reiterate that unless we're able to identify revenue, I don't know what other cuts we will be able to make to fill the gap. So when we take the $23 million gap that we have now, if we consider that perhaps we will get the $5 million that the mayor has put into his proposal, right? When we do the math, we are still short $18 million. We have done our due diligence to look at everything to say, maybe we can continue to combine classrooms and right size, bring everything up to the contractual numbers. We took a look at our high school master schedules and looked at courses that maybe had few kids and saying, okay, maybe that course doesn't run if it doesn't have sufficient number of students. Even when doing all of that and identifying a total amount of cuts, that every cut in there is going to hurt, because I'm talking about class size, I'm talking about course options. Even if we went through all that pain, we only identify approximately $4,255,000. That still leaves remaining another $13.7 million that we would have to find. It means that in addition to those cuts that we're saying would be painful, we would still have to find an additional 196 positions that we would have to cut on top of those 55 that we have already identified. So we have to talk about campaigns on how do we go after revenue. So I am prepared to send, and I'm going to use a strategy that I saw my colleague use down in Bridgeport, to just start a campaign and asking people, pick up the phone, start calling, start sending letters, because the only thing that can save us would be approval of that SB 1511. If that legislation were to be approved, it would mean that in New Haven, everybody wins across the state, right? Because that legislation speaks about increasing the weights on the educational funding formula. But if that legislation were to pass, it would bring in $42.7 million to New Haven. We would be able to take care of our $23 million deficit. It would leave another 18.7 that we could use to get out our equity formula for staffing, in addition to bringing in the curriculum materials that for the last 5 years we have been providing via the ESSER dollars. So for example, spending about $2.8 million in curriculum materials, supporting our after-school programming that we know, for example, this summer, we're not going to have enough to do everything that we used to do in the summer because we don't have the funding. We're even talking about in the school year, if we don't have the funding, maybe relying on having hubs, because we're not going to be able to have after-school program in every school, and continuing to do our career-connected pathways that right now relies on city grants that we have received. So that is the reality of where we are. So again, even if we continue right-sizing, look at opportunities, we will still be chasing another $13.7 million.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where we are today.
Well, thank you.
I'll open it up for any questions.
Comments or questions from the committee? Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, thank you for the presentation and going through the budget. And also thank you for clarifying the dire situation and what the steps and strategy can be for getting this rectified. It sounds very important to do what we need to do to be able to get the state to fund the district. I can see how this bill would make a big difference. And I can also see how not having the resources will keep us in an impossible situation. So thank you just for stating that. And yeah, give us our marching orders.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Downer?
I just have a quick question. I noticed on the spreadsheet, the financial spreadsheet, that it said other contractual services. You know, just to help me out, what are some of the expenses that will be covered under that $15 million?
Okay. We had, let's see what's in that category. I had, in the previous presentation, we put that, oh, I just want to make sure I have it, that we put a sheet that kind of took the line item codes, and then for folks that don't work on this every day, we put a category in there. Just bear with me, please, Ms. Downer. I have.
In the slide 24, if you're looking at the
I have
same
so
thing
many
as me.
budgets and and it's like, okay, which one did I put that in? So I have a slide 24. I don't know, Christine, can you bring up slide 24? Slide 24 in the budget presentation that we did last week. But if not, in contracted services, we have business travel, conference workshops, uniforms, postage, contractor services. We have legal, and we also have legal settlements as well in that other category as well. So that's why it has the other contractor services in there. So what we did was the budgets that you see are the summaries, but then we tried to do a category and a description so you could see, okay, I see this line here, but what is in this line? And I'll make sure that I can share that with you as well.
Okay, so my next question is, I know that we have a lot of software subscriptions. Have we ever taken a look at if we have like a one-stop shop where we can combine some of the subscriptions? I'm not talking about HIPAA stuff either. I'm talking about academia with attendance. Have we looked at those subscriptions where we can do some sort of combination of those?
Yes, the team has been working for the last 3 weeks looking at, we've really done a deep dive with these budgets. So what we've done is we looked at just about every single line item or every single expense in our contracted services and other, and then we pulled even our vendors to see what was in there. So there have been recommendations from the team. Well, let's look at this. Can we do this? Power schools. Can we, we might have 5 different pieces to it. So we've looked at, okay, fine. Can we pull all the power schools from, together and get one contract? And then can we also have a savings there? So yes, we are doing all of that work as well.
Okay. All right. I'll just go back and look at slide 24.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hannon. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. DeBron, too. Thank you.
President Yarborough?
Yes. A thought and a question. One, just thinking about the software. The vendors may need the money in this upcoming year and may actually be willing to drop their price in order to keep our services. They likely have a surplus in terms of what we are paying, what they are charging for software versus what it actually costs them to pay their employees, etc. So even as we're looking at cutting software, merging software, I would also be interested to see what bids or RFPs or what quotes these vendors give because the quotes may end up being a lot less than what we are currently paying. My question for Ms. Han is, I think you spoke to this, but I want to be sure. The budget that you presented, when you present the 2024-2025 approved budget, did you also say that you do not show or cannot show the actual expenses? You just show what's been approved? Because the actual cost would be a lot greater than the actual approved cost. So I'm wondering about the percent difference between what we are requesting for the 2025-2026 year and what our actual costs are shaping out to be this year, because the percentage is probably lower than 8% and 11%.
What we're doing now is on our monthly financial reports. That's when you'll see that information. On our financial report, you will see the column which has the 208, what we actually got from the city. And then on a monthly basis, that monthly report that we do, it's showing you our actual expenditures to date. So what it's actually doing is saying, okay, fine, we need it. And historically, that's what we're trying to show as well. Because this isn't something that just happened today. This is something that it seems to be continuing. And fortunately, when I stepped into this role, we got all of our ESSER money and we got, a nice windfall of money. So we were able to do these things. Our general funds never really increased. Why my first year in this particular role, we got I think we got 8 million, which was the highest we ever got. In a budget increase. So I was like, okay, fine. We did get a nice sizable increase, but it was a time when they were able to provide a sizable increase. And that's why I always say thanks to everybody that had a hand in these budgets, the Board of Aldermen, the mayor, because they did work with us to give us increases. But what happened was that it was never enough to go backwards, because we were always without ESSER and all the influx of these other money. This would have happened a long time ago. So ESSER really saved us. So now what we're seeing is like in a typical example, and I'll just go back to like say the 5. If we ask for 5 and then we get 3, well, we're already in the whole 2 million before we even get started. And as you look at the contractor increases, you'll see where, okay, people are getting their, earned raises and what have you. Our benefits are going up. Everything is going up, but we have not been keeping up with the funding. If we were fully funded, I mean, this would be a breeze, because then all you can, if we were getting less fund, then you could say, okay, fine. We had this, we're reducing this, so we can try to cut this or scale back. We can't even scale back because there's nothing to scale back to. So again, what has always happened is that while we asked for a certain number in general funds, if we didn't get that number or close to that number, we were always kicking the can. So now what's happened, all the other money that's come in is gone away. So now, I mean, you can't even kick the can anymore, because the can is basically little pieces of metal now. And so that's what's happening. So now we're seeing probably what we could have saw maybe 5 years ago, in terms of that we were always underfunded. And while it's no one's fault, the picture is there. You can see where, like I say, if you ask for 8, you get 5. Okay, now you're short 3. So then next year you start off and you ask for another 8, but say you only get 6. Well, now you're short 2. So that compounds with no place to go. And like I always say with the general funds, what happens is that while we look at, okay, what can we cut? Well, if you weren't putting anything in there, but just covering your basic costs, there is nothing to cut. And if you look at if you take the line items and look at yourself, I mean, it's clear as day. There is nowhere else to go with these budgets now.
Understood. Thank you.
And that's why, too, we used to say with new funds coming in, what we always try to do, and we take it very seriously, we look at and say, okay, fine, we're getting X amount of dollars. What can we do that's sustainable, that we don't have to then lay off 12 people, what have you? What in this new funds can we do to assist our schools to supplement, but not to hire more people, so that we would have problems that we experienced in the past. Even if you hire 2 people, well, if the grant is 3 years, now you got those 2 people, which has to be rolled over.
Understood.
And I hope I've explained it so that it,
Yes, thank you.
I might start talking fast, so you have to,
Dr. Negron?
Just wanted to go back to the question about the contracts, just to give everybody an idea of what it is that we have been doing for weeks. Just like we've gone staff by staff and look at the scope of service, we've done the same thing as it relates to our contracts. And many of those contracts, when we take a look at it, what is the funding source? We need to remember that the majority of our contracts are also paid out of grants. There's not much that gets paid out of our operating budget. So it's in a grant because when the grant was written and we won the grant, is because we are supposed to deliver on whatever it is that we wrote. So even when we look at, well, cut that amount, well, maybe you can't cut it because that was the way that it was written. And we still have to deliver on that. So it's just, again, a reminder that we're talking about our operating budget. Grants are great. The district has relied on grants for many, many, many years to cover the gap, to Linda's point, that has always existed in our operational operational funding.
Thank you for that clarification. I just have one general, I have one point and then a more general comment. And one is on the slide, Ms. Hannons, where you talk about the actual needs. So it's basically the difference between the 8% and change versus the 11% and change. And you talk about there about how one is just if we do nothing, and the other is talks about vacancies, and we would be able to fill some of those. I think there's just a little confusion there as to you're not talking about there about everything on the staffing guidelines report, that if we had equitable funding, that we would be able to have enough STEM teachers and security folks and psychologists, et cetera. You're just talking about some of the highest needs off of that list. Am I correct in that?
Yes,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are basically classroom facing, because that's our goal is to make sure that there's a teacher in front of every child.
My recommendation would be wherever you're talking about that more ideal budget,
Mhm.
of the two presented, that there's an asterisk that says this is the high needs of the vacancies that we have, not the entire list. I know you have that information in there.
Mhm.
People can see it, but I mean, just to make it clear that it's not, that you're not talking about like solving all the staffing issues we have.
Right, Mr. Wilcox, to your point, right, it does not reflect that slide 9, where we do have the $38 million, right, that we would need if we were going to fill positions based on guidelines.
So I think it's good just to make it clear that this is a subset off of that list, the highest needs, biggest priorities right now. And the other thing is, I do think having a slide that shows the plan C, which is passing a balanced budget, and the cuts that would need if there wasn't anything added to the mayor's budget recommendation, if SB was it 1151? I'm trying to remember the number. 1151 doesn't pass, then this is what it would mean. And unfortunately, when more than 80% of our costs are staff and special education and transportation, where there's a lot of things, there's not a lot of leeway in there. That just means the looming staffing cuts. And so I think we all want to avoid that. And if my math is correct, that would be more than 250 positions.
Yes, because what I spoke about earlier, right, that we were able to identify by looking at direct impact, that was the about 55 positions. But again, we would need an additional 196.
Yeah, and that's why that SB 1151 is so key, because that not only money has to come from somewhere,
Mhm.
and the state is where the money is. City doesn't have much more. But I think making clear that this is what it means if you're not supporting something like SB 1151 or increased funding from the city,
Mhm.
understanding that the money is at the state, one of the richest states in this country, and very inequitable funding for schools of high need. So I think having a slide that just spells it out,
Mhm.
A, B, and C, A is status quo, B is status quo plus some high needs positions being filled, and C is a disaster.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for the update. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay.
Mr. Wilcox, I'm sorry, I just want to remind everybody again, as soon as I finalize that letter that I'll be sending out, I'll be sure to share with all of you so that you can see it. But again, the goal is that it's going to go to our parents, to our teachers, and to our students.
All right, thank you. I think I did notice that SB 1151 is moved from Education Committee to Appropriations, so it's progressing. But I'm sure there's headwinds, including from our governor. Okay, next item on the agenda is adult ed lease, but we're going to drop that down because we're going to go into executive session. So is there an update on the RFP for part-time custodial and for facilities management? I don't see Mr. Carter here. I believe Ms. Bourne mentioned, and I see it on the city purchasing site, that the part-time custodial RFP closes tomorrow. Is there an update on when the facilities management contract will be posted? RFP will be posted, rather.
I can only report that it's on the system now for review.
And that means it's progressing, and so it's imminent.
It's progressing. There were some terms that we needed to meet with legal to discuss to make sure that all the items that may enhance the contract going forward are in there.
Thank you. Are there comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. Oh, Ms. Downer?
Ms. Bourne, can you just has some of the lessons learned that we've learned with the last SJ services, has that been captured on the RFP?
That has been captured, yes. And that's the point of the ABM taking a little bit time to make sure that those are captured as well.
Okay, so I also, since we're on the topic, I know that the school was looking into mitigating Local 271 with doing some of these services. Has that actually been laid out? That's what Mr. Carter was talking about before. Or is that just set to the side?
Dr. Negron has her hand raised.
Dr. Negron?
If I wanted to answer to your first question about lessons learned, that is where we leverage on Mr. Carter to ensure that this time around there was stronger language in those RFPs than what was there before, so that we don't run into these issues again. There were also strategies that Mr. Carter was recommending in terms of hybrid situations that he was looking to put into the contract as well. I have to go back and see which one of those made it into the proposal. I know that a lot of it that we were running into had to do again with the fact that we don't have funding. But we can go back and pull some of those details to be able that we are able to share those with this committee.
So no, I was asking about because of the situation came up with the snow. Yeah. And we were supposed to look at mitigating it back. And that was a separate situation here. We have private entities here doing business with us, which is supposed to save us money and we're supposed to be increasing efficiency. But what is happening here is increasing costs and reducing the quality of work. So we talked about that previously of just take a look at it. Mr. Carter was supposed to meet with Public Works to see how we can mitigate some of this, because last I checked, we paid $7 million. And the quality that we have, it wasn't even worth $7 million. We also have a situation where there was licensure, where you have licensure problems with ABM. So those need to be built into that RFQ too, like verification through the state of Connecticut licensing. So I don't know what was actually on the RFQ. I really need to see it. Is it possible for us to see the RFQ, or we have to go on Bonfire? I don't think Bonfire even exists anymore. I don't think it exists. But I
So-
mean, that's what we were looking at last. That was, told to the board that we were going to have some sort of mitigation. And is that something we're not going to get? And we're still going to continue with privatization? We need to know. I need to know that. I think the board needs to know that. That was at a board meeting.
Attorney Alexiadis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't like being the FOIA police, but I just feel compelled to point out that snow removal is not on the agenda. And the agenda item we're discussing, if I recall, is I believe it's the RFP for part-time custodial and facilities, those RFPs. So we shouldn't be talking about snow removal.
Thank you, Attorney Alexiadis.
That's all.
I think it was used, in my opinion, it was used as an example of for the facilities management RFP as an example of that. But I take your point. Thank you. Are there more?
So my point is, I'm just giving it, excuse me, sorry, I'm not done. So I get what you're saying, Attorney Alexiata, but I know it was said to the board. What was said to the board that we were going to bring some of this custodial service back. And I'm asking the question, is that going to happen or it's not? So I'm not even mentioning snow removal. That's a different, ain't even go there. Are we bringing back mitigating some of these services, or that's not no longer on the table?
Dr. Negron?
So we're going to bring you back to this committee what made it into the RFP. One of the things that we were discussing is how to eventually get there. That's what we have been saying. We will eventually get there. We're trying to find a path to do that. Again, I don't want to speak without the item in front of me, but I will make sure that we pull that out and that we're able to bring this to the next FNO.
And the other question I have also too is we're going to run into the same situation last year that we did, and we didn't have coverage for the summer. Is that the case now? That means from June 30th. So let me just make it very clear. From July 1st until the first day of school, some of the buildings will be open. Will we have coverage, or do we have to, stay with SJ Services or ABM?
So, Dr. Negron?
Again, the RFPs are out there for SJ Services because we're looking to replace. There's another RFP out that I will bring again the details to this committee so that we know, so then I can speak to you with facts. I don't have that in front of me right now. We also know that we're being cognizant that we cannot have interruption of services to your point, Ms. Downer, right? We don't want to be caught at the end of not having any service. So let me go into that piece, bring back the details, and again, those were informed by the expertise of Mr. Carter to write that RFP.
Okay, thank you. Because the last time we had to use, we had to use ABM again because ABM is there. And for continual services, I almost think that these RFPs should have went out a little sooner than going out. I don't know the date. Can you just give me the date the RFPs went out?
It's listed on OpenGov on the city portal, procurement portal. Part-time custodials was released on March 9th. The due date closes tomorrow, April 8th.
Okay.
I'll just say in previous testimony, Mr. Carter said that this would be adequate time to make the transition to a different company if a different company is selected. And I'll just also say in terms on this item, in my recollection is that Mr. Carter and Superintendent Negron have talked about wanting to Mr. Carter particularly was doing the math on seeing what we could afford to bring in-house and what we could not afford to bring in-house at this time. So I do look forward to seeing what the actual RFP looks like for the facilities management.
Is there anything in the clause that says that we could refuse work or we could actually get rid of a contractor for breach of contract? Is there anything that we can end the contract immediately? That's from the school, Mr. Wilcox. This is a lesson learned. I'm asking about that because we have a situation where you have SJ Services refusing to do something. So we need to actually protect ourselves. Maybe Attorney Alexiadis can tell us if we would put that in a contract.
Attorney Alexiadis, if you have an answer for that, I think as far as what's in the actual RFP documents for part-time custodial, that's posted right now and can be reviewed by anybody to see what the actual documents the district is saying. That's different than the actual final contract that's signed and all the details and dates and numbers and everything get added. And we can always review a contract once it's been done. So
is there also anything where we can exclude? Matt, I'm trying to be real nice, and you really are pushing it. I'm not done.
Ms. Downer, please continue.
I'm trying to be nice. I'm asking a question, and I'm getting cut off. I don't understand what that is.
Please ask it.
So is there any way we could not actually have someone that we previously had not even be considered for a bid or to participate in the RFP process?
Attorney Alexiadis.
As to the first question, our agreements typically include termination for, I'll say for convenience, but termination at the option of the city. For example, the SJ Services contract allows us to terminate the contract for any reason or no reason on 60 days notice. Now, there are, and lawyers like that better than for cause termination because then you don't get in an argument about whether there's cause or not. So we have a right to terminate contracts on notice. It is typically on 60 days notice. And that's just a contractual right that we have. And the second question?
Do we have a right to refuse, not include if we had a vendor that did a terrible job, didn't breach our contract, do we have a right that we don't allow them to place the bid?
Okay, so there is as I understand it, but I have not been through it, as I understand it, there's a debarment process for bids, right? I don't know how often it's been used. But that, it's important to have that option in a bid process, because in a bid process, you're committed to in almost all circumstances, going with the low bidder. That is, as my understanding, that's typically not a process for RFPs and RFQs, but an RFP gives the awarding entity much more discretion and scoring factors, which can which I think can take into account whether we're not satisfied with the person in the past.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you all very much. We look forward to hearing at our next meeting about an update on the facilities management contract RFP and being able to review those materials. And I do appreciate that everybody has been learning from various issues we've had this year, learning from Mr. Carter being here. And so I'm confident that lessons have been learned, and it'll be good to see them borne out in the documentation. All right. Seeing nothing else on this one. Next item is just a draft of our discussion item calendar. Please take a look at it, and if anybody has suggestions for things to add or needs clarifications, please send comments to this committee and to Dr. Negron and to Ms. DeMayo. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, next item is upcoming financial issues. Are there any looming financial issues? I do know that there was some reporting in the paper about potential loss of funds due to federal government removing anything. Is there anything else on that or any other looming financial issues we should be aware of?
Mr. Wilcox, I did share an email. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, correcting what the Connecticut Mirror had published. That figure is incorrect. Basically, in terms of that had to do with the extension that we had to liquidate, which was supposed to be March 28 of 2026. And then all of a sudden, right, I think it was on April 1st that we had noticed that everything had to be liquidated March 28, 2025. Basically, we have about 167,000. Let me make sure that I'm pulling the right figure that I sent over to you earlier today. And at this point, all I'm hearing from the state is that they're looking for ways on how we could continue to advocate to still have the leeway to utilize those funds, but I haven't heard anything back yet from the state. But it was a little bit over $167,000 and not the 193 or so that was reported on Connecticut Mirror.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the last item, which is going into executive session. So I move that we go into executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 1-206D and E for discussion of the selection of a site or the lease of adult education, and 1-210B10 for discussion which would result in the disclosure of attorney-client privilege communications. Joining us in this executive session would be the superintendent, Attorney Alexiadis, Principal Benora, and anybody else. That'd be who are joining us. So it's been seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. President Yarbrough?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. So we're in executive session. The link has been sent.
Oh, bye.
That's okay. Morning.
You're not gonna be here too. No, we're still at the meeting. They're in executive session. Oh.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We're finished with executive session. No votes were taken, obviously. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Moved by Ms. Downer, seconded by President Yarborough. Ms. Downer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.